Hello, you're watching Tell It Like It Is, and my name is Kathy Benuck. Today we have a very special guest. Carol Shea-Porter is here, and as I'm sure all of you know, she is the Democratic candidate for the 1st New Hampshire Congressional District, a seat that she's held before. Now, Carol grew up in the Seacoast region in New Hampshire. She earned her bachelor's degree from UNH in social services and then went on for a master's degree in public administration from UNH. She was a social worker by profession, and among her duties, she directed senior centers in both Maryland and in New Orleans. And in 2006, she attributed some of her decision to run for Congress to her experience as a volunteer worker after Hurricane Katrina, which we know, of course, devastated the South, particularly New Orleans. And Carol was practically, I guess, in a state of shock over the federal government's not so great response in a hurry to it all. She won her congressional seat in 2006 after defeating the incumbent Republican Congressman Jeb Bradley. And in 2008, she was reelected after overcoming a challenge from Jeb Bradley. And at that point, a New Hampshire fundraising effort was set, believe it or not. Now, while in Congress, Carol served on the Committee on Armed Services, the Committee on Education and Labor, and the Committee on Natural Resources, as well as subcommittees of each one of those committees. She co-sponsored a bill to protect U.S. troops from disposal of toxic waste in open burn pits, introduced a bill to study urological war wounds, and also did a lot of work on expanding health care for New Hampshire veterans. She was a strong supporter of enacting environmental regulations aimed at reducing effects of climate change. And she was also known as a strong supporter of pro-choice, and subsequently did receive the endorsement of Emily's List, which is an effort by pro-choice Democratic women. So subsequently, for most of her term, she did receive very, very high rating marks from groups like the National Family Planning and Reproductive Health Association that I believe gave her a 100% rating, as did Planned Parenthood. Now, the political website called On the Issues said that she was a hardcore liberal. I guess Carol's a liberal, but I don't know if I'd say hardcore. I don't like calling anybody hardcore or anything. But on the one hand, that probably helped her, the liberal rating, to get very high ratings from groups like the League of Women Voters that gave her a 100% rating, or the American Civil Liberties Union, 100%, or for Americans for Democratic Action that were in the high 90s, and several more. But on the other hand, it may have contributed to her getting not so great ratings from some other groups. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, for example, didn't rate a high. Americans for Tax Reform didn't. American Farm Bureau, better. So again, you know, it all depends on, I guess, how you're labeled and the different issues you focus in on while you're in office, how all these ratings go. So they can be all over the place. 100% here with one group, 0% over there with another group. So, in any event, every now and then should be in a little bit of controversy, again, depending what side of the fence you were on. She did vote yes to impeach President George Bush for charges that he lied about Iraq. Some people thought that was great. Other people obviously were very upset by it. She was a strong supporter of President Obama's Affordable Health Care Act. And most of you probably remember she ran into some pretty vigorous, I guess is the word, crowds, as she did go around the state speaking about that and about her support for it. In 2010, she was defeated in a bid for re-election to a third term by Manchester Mayor and Republican Frank Ginter. But since then, she has continued to remain active in New Hampshire politics, in Democratic issues, and is a very frequent blog contributor to Patch around the state. She resides in Rochester with her husband Gene, and the couple have 2 grown children now. So with no further ado, we are going to go straight to Carol, and I'm delighted to have you here. This is our first time doing a show together.
It's nice to be here.
Well,
So let me just correct one thing.
Okay, I'm sure I made some mistakes
no,
somewhere.
I actually didn't vote to impeach President Bush.
Oh, okay. There's a website that had that on about you. Okay.
I mean, I don't know which one you're talking about, but
I'll actually check and let you know.
Right, as you know, looking on the internet, they do get some things wrong. So.
Okay, well, I'm glad you said that because I don't want to attribute anything to you that you didn't do that people get mad about.
Right, exactly.
People get mad about all kinds of things.
That's right. And now things on the internet, sometimes it's hard to tell.
Yes, it is. It is. Well, let me ask you this, because, at the end of your term, of course, was when all of the stuff was going on, a very wild controversy over the Affordable Health Care Act. And as I mentioned, you had gone around the district, and a brave thing to do, because you certainly knew that you were going to be hearing from a lot of people who totally disagreed on it. Do you think that your support for that at the time was a factor in your being defeated for election by Frank Ginta?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
You do think so?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I had campaigned on that. I said that I was going to work hard to bring health care. And I was elected twice on that platform. But clearly the district, like every other place, was divided on that issue. And one of the biggest problems that we had was the way that it was presented initially, where people thought there were death panels, and they were very, very frightened and concerned and thought it was a kind of takeover. But I think now people recognize that we actually still have private insurance companies that are doing quite well, and that it was not, it's a consumer-friendly law, but it's not a takeover.
Okay. Now, I did watch your interview yesterday on Channel 9's Close-Up, WMUR TV. And you were critical that Republicans in Washington have not done enough to protect mortgage deductions on income taxes. And kind of on that same vein, I know that the Obama's Affordable Health Care Act is huge. I mean, what was it, like 1,700 pages, something to that effect?
Yes.
I know it was very, very large.
Right.
And obviously, something that big, everybody's not going to know every little nuance of it. And obviously, people are still acquainting themselves with some of the nuances of it. And I hate to use the word hidden, but for lack of a better word, hidden in there is a mandate that after January 1st, 2013, there'll be a 3.8% tax on unearned income to help pay for the cost of the Affordable Health Care Act. And this tax will apply to the proceeds from the sale of single-family homes, townhouses, condominiums, co-ops, and even rental properties. So essentially, if somebody sells a house for $400,000, they could be paying a tax to the federal government as high as $15,200 to help fund Obamacare. Now, with so many seniors, having to sell their homes to help finance their retirement, and right now, today, so many people really selling their houses for less than they're worth because they have to, because they're out of work or what have you. How can this be defended?
Well, let me reassure people that are listening that this is not for everybody. This tax will be for higher income, for basically the top 2% in the country. So this is not going to hit everybody. If you sell your home and you make $50,000 on it, you are not going to have that tax. So, I think that's one of the misconceptions that everybody thinks. Just like they said that if you are not energy efficient, you won't be able to sell your home, and so many other things about it. So what I recommend, rather than we go over point by point here, I recommend that people go to the website, healthcare.gov, and they can look up all of that. And they can also look, I think, at the National Realtor site, because they know what the regulations are as well.
Well, actually, I did look at this site yesterday,
but it's based on people's
they still
income.
are saying that this is a big, huge problem, that people don't recognize how big a problem it is.
Right. Well, it's based on people's income about whether they actually will pay a little bit more. But again, if you're going to have a health care system that covers people, and if you're going to try to control costs, and we do know that health care premiums had risen 80% after it was adjusted for inflation, 80% in a dozen years. And so it's not like healthcare costs were going down or that premiums were going down. So it's an effort to get a handle on costs while they increase the number of people who are insured. And the insurance industry, and it's still it's a privately delivered insurance system, as you know, healthcare system. The insurance companies will pick up about 30 million new customers. So when you look at it and you recognize that we're going to put many, many more people into the insurance, and we will save money because people who go to hospitals without insurance actually cost the average family about $1,000 a year in premium costs. So there's, you know, what I'm saying is that there's two sides there, and you have to look and recognize that somewhere something has to give. Your viewers and American viewers understand that we simply can't keep going the way we're going. I mean, the burden on the middle class has been enormous, and we have to make sure that we have some revenue coming in somewhere. And we can start by talking about, you know, the tax cuts that were meant to be temporary and became permanent, and we can talk about, you know, the costs of the two wars. No matter how you feel politically about them, they were not paid for, and so they are on the credit card bill for the United States of America. And you talk about the pharmacy prescription bill, which was not paid for. I mean, it was good for seniors, but we should have been paying our bills as we go along. I thought we should have had war bonds to pay for the war. So ultimately what we wind up with is we wind up with an enormous amount of debt, and there has to be some way to pay as you go. And this is basically a pay-as-you-go system so that we won't run into deeper costs for health care. But nobody ever said that health care costs would drop, and nobody ever said, or they shouldn't have said, that this would be like free for everybody, because it's not. I mean, it has to be a way to pay for this. But when you look at the overall result of this health care law and what it has done, and I think people are becoming familiar with it now, and for example, controlling costs, and seniors will now be able to get their prescription drugs, and we're closing that donut hole, the part where they have to pay for it. They get preventive care, which is critical because seniors under Medicare before could not get a physical each year. So we have preventive care, not just for them, but for everybody. We also covered people who had pre-existing conditions, and we started off with children with pre-existing conditions, put a cap on the health care law so that people won't lose their homes. And actually, I should say we took away that cap for the insurance companies who would cut a family off when they reach a certain point in an illness, and then they would fall into medical bankruptcy. Half of the foreclosures at that point were a result of medical bankruptcy, which is very, very difficult. We also made sure that families who have children under the age of 26 will have coverage, because when young people leave tech school or high school or college, very often they don't have insurance, and they tend to switch jobs and try to work their way up the ladder, so this insurance goes with them. We have much better coverage for women now. Being female is not a pre-existing condition anymore. So all these things are very good, but there has to be some revenue to pay for that.
Okay, I hear you, and I hear what, you know, a lot of people
Right.
say are the benefits, and some of them I would agree with, some of them I wouldn't.
Sure.
Obviously, I mean, all of us aren't going
That's
to
right.
agree on every little
And
point
by
of
the
it.
way, let me say I don't agree with everything across the board either.
Okay.
So, you know, when you look at something, politics is the art of compromise, as we know, and we haven't compromised enough of late, you know, certainly. But to be able to get some legislation through, people have to be able to be willing to bend a little in each direction.
I think that might be the rub, though, Carol, because, you know, I think all of us understand we have a responsibility to our fellow man, and I think all of us agree that healthcare is a humongous issue.
It is.
And in some fashion or another, it affects everybody more dramatically to some than others, obviously. But, you know, when I hear things like this, now, yeah, you are right that I used the number, you know, for a $400,000 house sale, that the tax could be as high as $15,200. Could be. But
Yes.
obviously there are factors, as there is with any type of deduction or anything else, that could keep diminishing that cost down, so that maybe somebody might only pay
Sure.
$5,000 or $3,000 or whatever. But I guess my point to that is this. How many people do you think right now really, truly realize that as of January 1st, 2013, we are going, in some fashion or another, pay a tax to the federal government that none of us had any clue that we were going to have to pay, and it is going to be going toward, and I know Democrats hate it when you say Obamacare, but just so that I don't have to keep saying that whole long name over
I
and
like
over again.
Obamacare. It's okay,
Okay,
to
all
say
right.
it. I'm
No,
not,
some
I'm
people
not
get
offended.
offended.
No, not
So,
offended.
you know, so I try not to, you know,
Sure.
put a tag on anything that's going to offend
Right.
anybody.
No,
But
it's okay.
but I mean, the point is that I think this has been one of the debates, and is the reason for the continuing debate on the whole thing, is that there seems to be so much in there that little by little is coming out. And when I heard about that particular one, I thought, wow, because, you know, with real estate, the
Yeah, but-
issue it is right now, boy, that just seems like the wrong place to throw in a federal tax. It really, truly does.
Well, 98% of the people will not experience that at all. I mean, that's really important to say. That
98 of people selling.
98%, yes.
What do you mean by that?
Selling their homes, because in order to have any kind of extra tax, and I don't know exactly, you know, your dollar figure there, so, and where you got your source, but I can just tell you that most people will never actually have a tax on
A
their
lot
homes.
of my information came from National
Yeah.
Association
But they
of
won't have,
Realtors.
but most people will not qualify because it has to have to pay any additional tax here because it's based on your overall income. So here's the position.
Yeah, but if somebody were very wealthy, I mean, Carol, really, if somebody were very wealthy, they would be living in a house worth a whole lot more than $400,000. Because $400,000, unfortunately, doesn't buy you too much anymore.
Yeah, but
especially
it's
depending
not
where you
just
might
on the
live.
house. It's, you know, looking at the overall income and where they qualify for income. So it's not just, you know, based upon the sale of the house. It's where they are in their income. But
No, I understand,
yeah.
but I was drawing the parallel that if
Right.
somebody is of an upper income,
Right.
in all likelihood, they're not living in a $400,000 house.
But again, you know, if you look across the whole spectrum and you recognize that we have continued the Bush tax cuts, which were not intended to be permanent, as you know, and they were
Right.
supposed to be
Right.
temporary. And so we've continued the Bush tax cuts. All across the spectrum, people who are very, very high income have actually been doing quite well versus the middle class. So, and we know that percentage-wise, well, we can take Governor Romney. Okay, he paid on the year that we know about 13.7% income tax.
Yes.
Now, I don't know, in my circle, and I'm very middle class, I don't know anybody who got away with 13.7%. And you can say it's legal, and it is legal, but it's legal because somebody wrote a tax code, and I would say Congress wrote a tax code that favored people who were very, very wealthy. Now, I want to tell you that I'm all for wealth creation. You know, I always say that I wish I had more money, and my kids certainly wish I had more money. So I believe in wealth creation, and I worked very hard all of my life from the time that I was a young kid. I mean, I actually sold cards door to door, and I worked, you know, shoveling
Well, that's
driveways.
because you went to a parochial school like me.
Yeah, we were workers.
They had us doing stuff like that. Candy, Christmas
That's
cards,
right.
name it.
That's right. And I can remember selling mittens and selling all kinds of things and you know, saving money. So I have a very strong work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked in factories. I did double shifts at Davis and Rubber to put myself
Mm-hmm.
through college. And I worked as a waitress and a chambermaid. I have a very, very strong work ethic, and I think that most of us do. But here's the point, that if you are successful, and you know, God bless you, and I hope everybody is, then you should be like a good family member and pay your fair share. Not a penny more, but to be paying 13.7% when somebody who is earning $50,000 or $60,000 a year does not get the same opportunity. It doesn't seem fair, and it doesn't seem fair to Americans right now because it isn't fair. And so we know that Americans are smart. We know that there are places where we need to save money. And you know, if you ask me where, and I hope you do, I'll tell you where we should save money. But we also know that we need to have some revenue. So we can't give everybody all the time, you know, as a tax subsidy and expect that this country will have enough money to run on. So it's a balance, and it's a conversation that is worth having in this country. At what point do we say, okay, you know, we have to have some revenue, and who pays? And my position has been that it's been too hard for the middle class, just too difficult. And you don't have to take it just from me. Senator Culver wrote and I'm sure you heard me talk about it before, But he wrote a book, and I think it's called Subsidies of the Rich and Famous. And he's talking about, subsidies for your yachts, and subsidies for this, and subsidies for that. And at some point, people have to say, look, you've got to be treated like everybody else. You have to pay your fair share. And I think that is what Americans, regardless of political party, are noticing right now, that some people aren't being hit at the same rate as others, and that their lives are so much easier. So,
well, excuse me, I think, and it doesn't really matter if people from the same parties are talking to each other. There's no question we need lots of changes on lots of different issues. And I frankly don't know if some of these things will ever be answered in our lifetimes because they're so big and so involved.
Right.
I just want to switch on something, because this has been something you've been very, very vocal on in the past few weeks, and you were again on Channel 9 yesterday. And obviously Frank Ginter is your opponent, so obviously you'll talk about him, and I'm sure he talks about you as well. And you did criticize him strongly, and I know you have in blogs and such, for not signing on with you to keep super PACs out of New Hampshire. I was a little curious about super PACs with all we're hearing about them, and I will not claim to be the expert, and I will not say that my research is infallible, because it absolutely is not, as I think I've proven at least once during this show today. But from my understanding, there's really only one right now in this 1st Congressional District in New Hampshire, and that's the unabashedly I should say, liberal super PAC, Credo, I don't know if they call it Credo or Credo Mobile, which is a liberal cell phone company based in San Francisco. And they have, in fact, opened an office in Manchester, and apparently recently I saw some photos on their website, actually, that they picketed a kind of a Ginter family day at the Fisher Cats baseball game a couple weeks ago. And I read their website, which there's not a whole lot to it, but their only goal, it appears, is to defeat 10 incumbent members of Congress, of which only 8 they've identified, and one of the 8 is Frank Ginter. And it didn't say it on their website, but I've heard through kind of asking around that they are supporting you, and which really isn't relevant to my question.
Well,
my question is this, though: they are the only super PAC in New Hampshire. Have you asked them to leave and go back to San Francisco and mind their own business?
Well, first let me say, I don't talk to them.
Okay.
I know they're there, but I didn't invite them.
No, I didn't. I'm not saying you did.
And I would be very happy if they all left, including them. So I have absolutely nothing to do with that. But I will say that actually, from what I understand about them, is that they are on the ground, okay? Now, I think it would be lovely. Meaning that they're not running ads, whereas they're a 501.
Yeah, aren't they supposed to be going to raise $10 or $20 million or something?
I don't know, but I will tell you that the 501c4s and the others, okay, that came in for Frank and against me, I was number 7 in the country for outside money, number 7 for the target, right?
Okay.
And Mr. Ginter has the Americans for Prosperity, and the Koch brothers and all the others there.
Did any super PAC support you?
If you,
because I did read that.
I actually don't.
Your second, I guess it was your second, not when you first ran, but your first attempt at re-election.
Right.
Everything says, Politico, everybody else says that you broke all records for fundraising in New Hampshire.
In that time, yeah. But,
yes.
But
so I mean, was there any super PAC?
But you have to know something, that I don't take any corporate PAC money, and I don't take any DC lobbyist money.
Okay.
And I recommend that
So did you raise it all right here?
So no. We all raise everywhere.
No, I'm confused by all of it.
I hear you, and I appreciate that question, because I think people are confused by that. So let me just say that they can go and they can look up where Frank Ginter gets his money, and they can look up where I get my money. And I actually have posted it a number of times, and I will be posting it again, because I want people to see where the money comes from for him and for me.
Now this may be a stupid question. Is Emily's list a super PAC?
No.
But it's national.
No, yeah, and there's several ways that they do this. A super PAC actually has to name itself, so Credo names itself, right?
Okay.
I think they're a super PAC.
So if I started a super PAC, would I have to name it the Kathy Benuck super PAC?
You have to.
Sounds good, actually.
Well, you have to file. Okay, so they can like, you know, file. I think the Republicans. You saw all the super PACs in the Republican primary, and they were pretty nasty, and people wondered who they were. And then at the end, at
which
certain time
Republican primary are we
intervals,
talking about?
the presidential.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
And at the end, you know, people found out who they were because they do file. But a 501c4, you don't file. So you have no idea who's contributing to these 501c4s.
And Credo is 501c4?
No, I think they're a super PAC, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I think they've been calling them a super PAC
I
in the
understood
paper.
they were a super PAC,
Right.
yeah.
So that actually, well, they must be because people know that it's Credo, right? But if it's a 501c4, they have ways people can contribute to them, and they don't have to name their individual donors, and they can give as much as they want. And the way that they,
but what difference would it make whether or not they buy TV ads?
I don't
though?
like.
I guess that's where I'm losing you
Well,
on this.
I actually think that they should all stay out. Okay, I think they should stay out on the ground. I think they should stay out on the air. I think that it just shouldn't be there.
Okay.
So, but I think it's important for people to know that if it's offensive, and it is offensive, it's even more offensive when you think of, like, I was number 7 in the country for Target. So do you think I'm their fan? No, I'm not a fan of that.
Probably not.
No, absolutely not. And you know, the lies that are told, and there's no accountability. And I just think it'd be better if people sat down. Like I wanted to tell you,
Carol, I don't want to cut you off, but see where that clock is? What I'd like to do is they limit us to 30 minutes per candidate, but they don't say we can't have a candidate more than once. So I'd like to continue it with another interview if we can set it up with your people. But you have a little over 2 minutes, and I mean, I could ask you questions all day.
I know.
But I want you to have the chance to look at the camera and talk to people and say, this is why you need to put me back in office.
Okay.
All right? And I didn't mean that to be rude.
No,
I wanted to make sure you had time to close.
That's right. That's right. And thank you very much for the chance to come on the show.
And I'd like to have you back again.
I appreciate it.
And then we can continue it and have more time to talk.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
And I would like to tell everybody that I actually think that we should be debating all around the district. The issues that were just brought up are very important. There were a lot of things that we needed to clear up, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. But I'm asking people to send me back to office because I want to restore integrity and a New Hampshire work ethic to the New Hampshire seat. I worked very hard in Congress for the middle class, and I started to talk about how much I think that we need to work for each other, with each other, to create a stronger economy. I worked to make sure that there were more jobs. Yes, I absolutely am delighted that I voted for the Stimulus Act, because when economists got together, about 98% of them said it saved the country from falling into a depression. So the work that I've done for veterans and for troops, I was a military spouse, and it was my great honor to serve. Very, very proud of my husband. And I know, serving on the Armed Services Committee for 4 years, I had a chance to see exactly what the servicemen and women need and what veterans need in this country. So I'm a strong advocate for them. I'm also a very strong advocate for families. I recognize the pressure on families for jobs, for health care, for the chance to restore the American dream. And I've worked to do that. So I ask you all to take a look at my record. Obviously, not everything's always right on that internet, but I ask you to take a look at my record and see that I have been there working very hard for what I have always called the rest of us. So thank you again for the chance to talk today, and I look forward to seeing you again.
I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank you for listening closely and catching me, because I don't want to give out any misinformation. So
It's
I appreciate
hard. It's so hard because there's so many lies on the internet
I
now.
know,
So
and unfortunately, as we're all doing our research,
Right.
you know, we have to try to weed through it as best we can. We are so out of time.
Factcheck.org.
I really, really, really hope you don't think I was rude. I did
Not
not
at
want to
all.
interrupt you, but I wanted you to be able to
Not
talk
at all.
to talk
And
to
I-
the people rather than talk to
And
me.
I urge people to go to factcheck.org and take a look. That's probably, or PolitiFact,
Okay, and I
to
urge
find out.
people to also go to your website, which is www.Shea-Porter.com, and that will be on the screen
Right,
for people.
or go to Facebook,
Okay.
you know, and you can read the Facebook on my website.
Carol, we're out of time. I'm sorry. I
you.
want you to come back.
Thank you. Nice
Thank
to talk
you for
to
coming.
you. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And to all of you, we really are running down the clock this time. Thanks for watching. Go on Carol's website, and hopefully we will be able to get her back and allow her a lot more time to talk about her own platform. So thanks for watching, and you keep telling it like it is. She did, I did, you have to. Bye-bye.